Have you ever felt like the black sheep in your family, bearing the blame for everything that goes wrong? If so, you're not alone. The role of the family scapegoat is often invisible, yet its effects can be profoundly damaging, shaping your experiences from childhood well into adulthood. What is a scapegoat? The term scapegoat comes from an ancient ritual where a goat was symbolically burdened with the sins of the community and then sent away. In a family, the scapegoat is the child, or sometimes an adult, who is unfairly blamed for the tensions or problems within the family. Parents or family members may unconsciously choose a scapegoat as a way to unload their own frustrations and emotional baggage. This can range from small accusations like, "Why don't you ever listen?" to being blamed for the family's entire dynamic, as in, "Because of you, we're always fighting." The symptoms of being the family's scapegoat. Being constantly blamed leaves deep marks on both your psyche and behavior. Here are some common symptoms seen in those who have played the scapegoat role. Low self-esteem. When you're consistently criticized and blamed, you start to believe something is inherently wrong with you. You never feel good enough. Taking on too much responsibility. You've been conditioned to believe everything is your fault, so in adulthood, you often take on more responsibility than you can or should. Difficulty with boundaries. As a scapegoat, you are often overwhelmed by others' emotions. This makes it hard to set healthy boundaries in relationships as an adult. Perfectionism. Constant criticism leads to perfectionism as a defense mechanism. You believe that if you're perfect, you'll finally be appreciated. Fear of conflict. You may become extremely conflict avoidant, having learned that any tension can end up being blamed on you. But it doesn't stop here. The symptoms we've just discussed are merely the tip of the iceberg. The consequences of being the scapegoat can be profound and may cause long-lasting damage. Long-term damage of the scapegoat role. Let's take a look at these long-term effects and how they can influence your life. Relationship issues. One of the most common effects is difficulty in maintaining healthy relationships. You've grown accustomed to a dynamic where you're blamed, criticized, or excluded. As an adult, this may manifest in relationships where you either try too hard to please others, or you hold back out of fear of being criticized or rejected again. For example, you might find yourself in a relationship where you do everything to keep the other person happy, even at the expense of your own needs, because deep down, you're afraid of being blamed again. Or you may unconsciously choose partners who mistreat you because being criticized feels familiar. Unresolved trauma. The scapegoat role can also lead to deep-rooted unresolved trauma. These are often painful childhood experiences you never had the chance to process because you were blamed for things that weren't your fault. This trauma can later show up as mental health issues like anxiety or depression, as well as physical symptoms. Many people who were scapegoats in their family develop chronic stress or physical symptoms like tension headaches, back pain, or stomach issues. Your body has been on high alert for years, always bracing for the next round of blame or criticism. The emotional pain and stress you experienced as a child can become lodged in your body. Self-sabotage. Another long-term effect is self-sabotage. Over time, you start believing the message that you're not good enough or that everything is your fault. This leads to a lack of belief in yourself, even when you're doing well. You might feel like you don't deserve success or happiness. An example is someone who begins a new project or job with enthusiasm, but when things start going well, they pull back or sabotage their own progress, because deep down, they don't believe they deserve success. The patterns you learned as a scapegoat affect how you view yourself and the choices you make. Loss of identity. Finally, the scapegoat role can lead to a sense of lost identity. After years of being blamed for your family's problems, you may feel like you don't have an identity outside of that role. You're so used to being criticized that you no longer know who you are outside that context. This can make it difficult to understand yourself or know what you really want in life. It feels like you're constantly in survival mode instead of truly living. Your identity has been shaped by others' perceptions of you, and it takes time and effort to let go of that and rediscover your self-worth. It's important to realize that, while the damage can be deep, there is always hope. Recovery is possible. Valuable tips for recovering from the scapegoat role. Here are some valuable tips that can help you break free from the patterns of the scapegoat role and forge a new path forward. Recognize and validate your feelings. One of the first steps to healing is acknowledging that your feelings are valid. As a scapegoat, you were often told that you were overreacting, too sensitive, or that the family's problems were your fault. This message can deeply impact you, making you doubt your own perceptions and emotions. But it's important to realize that your experiences and feelings do matter. Write them down, speak them out loud, or share them with someone you trust. This helps you process the past trauma and free yourself from the harmful beliefs you've internalized. You have the right to name your truth, and by doing so, you give yourself permission to heal. Action step. Start a journal to record your feelings or practice speaking them out loud. Affirm yourself with statements like, "My experiences are real. What I feel is valid." Repeating these affirmations can help you revalue your emotions. Set healthy boundaries. As a scapegoat, you likely became accustomed to situations where your boundaries were crossed or disrespected. Rebuilding your emotional and mental health starts with learning to set clear and healthy boundaries in your family and other relationships. This means you have the right to state what is and isn't acceptable for you. It may be difficult, especially if you're used to people pleasing or avoiding confrontation. But by setting boundaries, you protect yourself and create space for your own growth and well-being. Action step: start small. Practice saying no to things that don't feel right for you. It can also help to think ahead about which situations aren't okay for you and how to respond assertively but kindly. Practice self-compassion. As a scapegoat, you've likely learned to be overly critical of yourself. You might blame yourself for things beyond your control or feel like you're never good enough. Self-compassion is a powerful tool for countering that negative inner voice and treating yourself with kindness. Self-compassion means accepting your mistakes and imperfections, just as you would with a close friend. It's okay not to be perfect, and it's important to allow yourself to fail and learn without it negatively impacting your self-worth. Action step: when you catch yourself being self-critical, ask, "What would I say to a friend in this situation?" Try applying the same kind and understanding words to yourself. Practice daily self-compassion, perhaps through a short meditation where you view yourself with kindness. Develop a new identity outside the family. One of the biggest challenges for the scapegoat is discovering a sense of self outside the role imposed on you by your family. Often it feels like you're stuck in a pattern of who you should be, while deep down you want to explore a different version of yourself. Take the time to discover what you value, what your passions are, and what makes you happy outside of your family's expectations. This is your chance to write your own story without it being defined by the role you played in the past. Action step: try new activities or hobbies that have always interested you but maybe were ignored. This could range from a creative outlet like painting or writing to something challenging like volunteering or taking a course. By trying new things, you discover parts of yourself that may have remained hidden. Connect with like-minded people. A crucial step in healing is breaking the sense of isolation. Many scapegoats feel alone in their experience because their family doesn't recognize or support them. Connecting with people who've had similar experiences can be incredibly healing. This can be done online through forums or support groups, or even through therapy, where you receive specific guidance for dealing with these patterns. Sharing your story and hearing others can offer the recognition and understanding that's often missing in your family environment. Action step: look for support groups or communities, online or in person, that focus on family trauma or recovery. There are groups specifically for people who have been scapegoats, where you can share tips and experiences and receive support from those who've been through the same. You are not alone. Many of us have walked this path and emerged stronger. Let's conclude with a question that brings us together. Have you experienced being the scapegoat? Share your experiences with us in the comments. This is a safe space to tell your story, and it could help someone else feel less isolated. O Allah, for those who have endured injustice in their families, make them among those who overcome and heal from their wounds. Say Ameen.